Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Electric Uncut, the video series where I talk about whatever I want to talk about. And today's subject is something that has been on my mind for over a year, even before the germ that must not be named took hold and dropped an atomic bomb on my subscription feed. Even before then, I've noticed a steady decline in YouTube gaming content, at least the stuff that I view, where in the past 5 or 6 years ago, I'd wake up in the morning, if I was going to go to work or go to school or go work out or whatever I was going to do, and I felt like, listening or tuning into some YouTube stuff, I usually had a ton of options to choose from, and it was actually a little bit of a struggle to keep up with everything, whether it's fighting game stuff, general gaming stuff, a little bit of shmup stuff here and there, mostly SDG Weekly, shoutouts to them. But as of late, when I wake up and open up my YouTube subscription feed, it's just barren, butterflies flying out of my wallet sort of situation, where many of these days I just wake up and look at my subscription feeds and, there's no videos to watch today. I mean, that's that. And I would say the majority of things I watch now isn't gaming related at all. 80% of what I watch is just random things that show up in my feed, or if I'm looking into a specific subject, or if I'm watching weird clip videos or comedy stuff. I mean, it's actually really sad because gaming is still my primary interest, and it's not that I don't want to watch gaming content, it's just I'm really struggling to find stuff I'm connecting with. Part of that is the curse of being a shmup arcade player now, to where most general gaming stuff doesn't hold my interest. But even outside of that, I still think that even if I was more willing to check out non-shmup, non-arcade stuff, because I am open-minded, like for years I watched RPG review channels and RPG channels, even though I never play them. I kind of enjoyed listening to people talk about them and all that sort of stuff. So I'm open to all that kind of stuff, but even in that sector, it's just really gotten pretty barren. And so in this video, I don't want to sound too whiny or anything like that, because in the brighter sense, the lack of good content out there sort of opens up a doorway for my channel to get more views and stuff like that, right? Supply and demand sort of thing. And while I think it is very hard to argue that YouTubing right now is much more difficult than it once was, at least in terms of getting an audience, getting your stuff out there, getting people to tune in, I think there's no doubt that you're just much more crowded out, and the audience is much more skeptical and sort of weary than it once was, where in the past maybe just doing a bunch of game reviews could get you out there. Like I remember Some Call Me Johnny, I found his channel just because he put out a bunch of random game reviews for like Sonic and Pokemon and all that sort of stuff. And back in the day, I was like, okay, I'll watch this channel. The idea now is a little bit ridiculous. Like I can't see myself just randomly watching someone's channel for Pokemon reviews and Sonic reviews. I think that those sort of days have passed for me. But maybe, that's just part of me being around for a long time. But I think this comes across in the general gaming trends, where let's say you want to go make that Sonic 2 review, which I'm a big fan of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, and I go to make my review. There's probably 8,000 other reviews out there already that are much more popular, and the view counts are going to be pretty insurmountable. But at the very least, what I want to talk about in this video, though, is I don't want to talk about why I think new channels can't break in. I think that is a subject that is discussed to death, and it's sort of uninteresting, because I think the final solution is you just got to keep at it. You got to keep the quality high. You got to pick and choose your battles where you can, all that good stuff. No, what I want to talk about in this video is actually, for me, a much more fascinating subject, which is why certain channels that are successful, or why channels that have been around a long time, are struggling now. Because this isn't just something that affects newer YouTubers. This is something that is hitting the legacy channels, the channels that have been around for a long time. And I think there's basically a variety of reasons why this happens, and I've made up a little list here. And so, yeah, I think this is be pretty interesting to talk about. Hopefully, some lessons can be learned for myself. This is sort of a reminder, mostly to myself, to stay on the straight and narrow and try and avoid these problems that have arisen, and these problems that I think that are contributing to why some of the channels I used to watch are either dead or put out pretty uninteresting content, which is almost worse, to be honest. I don't know what's worse, to have your channel just stop, or to have your channel become a shell of what it once was. So the first factor that I think really contributes to the lack of quality and interesting content of gaming stuff these days definitely is social media and the collective hive mind. This is a little bit complicated to articulate, but I will try my best. Not too long ago, I think a few months ago, half a year ago, I can't remember now, I actually quit Twitter. I made a whole video about it explaining why I did. Check it out if you can, because I think I was able to articulate a lot of complicated points there, and so I won't rehash them here. But the basic summary of why I quit Twitter is I noticed it was basically programming my brain into going for it rather than focusing on my content. I think it was feeding me a lot of empty calories, so to say, and draining my thought process and creative outlet a lot, to where I would be sitting down and focusing time towards a video or towards a podcast. Instead, I was sitting down and focusing time on creating just these fun little tweets or arguing with people on Twitter, all that sort of stuff. I think it really has by design, an ability to hijack content creators' brains and get them to engage with it rather than focusing on their content and that sort of thing. And I do think a lot of it is more detrimental than it is useful. And the feedback is just so much faster than with YouTubing. This is something that you'll notice a lot with legacy channels, is where in the past they'd be dropping videos once a week. Instead, you'll just see them dropping tweets like there's no tomorrow. But as far as actually making videos and stuff, that seems to be much more of a tall order than it once was. And I think the best analogy I can think of is those experiments they would do on rats back in the day. Maybe they still do them, where they'd put food in the rat's cage and they'd also put a morphine drip or some kind of drug. I think like cocaine or morphine, something like that. And the rat, instead of eating the food, would sit there and just do the drug over and over and over until it basically starved to death and died or had really severe health complications. And I think Twitter is like that for content creators, where you should be focusing on your work, you should be focusing on, making solid videos or whatever you do, but instead you're focusing on this sort of empty shell of content creation where you're not really creating anything except a bunch of things that people read for 3 seconds and move on. I don't think it really contributes to a brand all that well either. I think that's a big myth that people seem to think, is that Twitter's this really powerful promotional tool and it's a great way for people to get to know you and all that sort of stuff. I personally don't think so. I think sitting down and watching my videos is a much better way to get to know me than trying to argue with me on Twitter about Psycho and my Nintendo Switch reviews and all that sort of stuff. And so that was a huge reason why I got off it. I think it's just a huge waste of time. And I think some people are starting to pick up on this. And I also think that Twitter is unfairly balanced in a lot of ways. It's going to push you towards certain perspectives. It's going to push you towards certain modes of thinking and create what I call the Hivemind. And I think this is very, very real. And you'll see it across gaming content a lot, to where, let's say someone posts a review about a game, and then someone else posts a review about a game, and then a third person posts a review about a game. And wow, all these people have extremely similar takes. All these people are almost note for note saying the same thing. But it's not quite a situation of plagiarism. They're not necessarily plagiarizing each other, though that does happen in YouTube. But it's more like they all get their opinions from the same source, which is the mob on Twitter. And I think it's very interesting and sort of fascinating to study how this works, where most of the time these days you'll notice most gaming content tends to skew positive. Just take a look at my review of the Psycho collection on the Switch to get a great example of this, where I was basically the only person who did a negative review. And in the wake of my negative review, I got completely bombarded and I think let go from Nintendo Life for basically crossing the picket line of the popular opinion. And I think stuff like Metacritic really contributes to this, where now you're making reviews into a game itself. Right? It's like, oh, you're hurting our stats by making negative reviews. And so I even had someone call me arrogant for giving it a negative review because, everyone else gave it a positive review and I gave it a negative review. How dare I do that, even though I think I presented very valid and strong conclusions as why I gave it a negative review. And I think the test of time has basically proven me right in that regard. And the day we get a much better release of Psycho on the Switch, people will forget that, yes, they gave this previous port a positive review. Another quick note on this factor is just think of the score inflation we've seen over the years, where, okay, so the Psycho collection on the Switch, which has all these input lag issues and is so bare bones, it's basically just a ROM, a laggy, crappy ROM. You give it an 8 out of 10. what happens when M2 or some other developer comes along and releases a proper port? A 10 out of 10? You know what I mean? Like, you're not giving yourself much wiggle room with these inflated scores. I actually ran into this when I did a review on Nintendo Life where I gave a game a really high score, but they were like, well, you can't give it this high of a score because of some other scoring issues. So they actually docked the score. And then someone in the comment section who'd been following all my reviews noticed, hey, why did you give this game the same score as another game that you were more critical of? It sounds like you were saying in this review that this is the better game, and yet you give it the same score. Well, I actually didn't give it this. You know, I don't know if I actually said this in the comments section. If I did, that's probably another reason why I got fired. But it's something like, well, I didn't actually give it this score. The editor did. You know, they changed my review score. And this Hivemind problem is a huge, huge problem. And sometimes I think people really need to check themselves because it can cross into the line of, man, this is either plagiarism or something. You know, it gets to be, and it also gets really tiring for the audience. Another really interesting thing about this that can go the other way is most everyone skews positive these days because, as a YouTuber, I'll tell you this, positive reviews are the much safer play because giving a negative review, you will always have backlash. Every single time, you will have backlash to a negative review unless, and here's the caveat that plays into the hive mind, unless the hive mind of people on Twitter and in the gaming sphere all come to a consensus to give it a negative review. In that case, that's when you see people will go ham on a review. And sometimes I think it is very unjustified. For instance, with Star Fox Zero, basically Polygon and all these other members of the gaming hive mind gave it a very negative review. I think Polygon refused to even complete the review because the motion controls were just too offensive. The idea of having any kind of hand-eye coordination was unbearable to this reviewer. And so they ended up giving the game very negative reviews. You saw this across basically all the outlets except Famitsu because they're Japanese and they don't care what the rest of the world says. They're going to do their thing. And also I think Japanese gamers are more inclined to understand arcade genres than Western gamers. But in any case, you see all the major outlets give it these really negative reviews that I think are very unfair, and you can tell that a lot of them are sort of just regurgitating points from one another. You know, because it's like, okay, did all of you not have any sort of hand-eye coordination, or are all of you this bad at Star Fox? Or is it just that you all, you know, play the game for an hour and you all come to the same conclusion? And having dipped my toes a little bit in the reviewing space and, you know, that sort of thing, like, you know, in these magazines and that sort of stuff, I do know that most reviewers probably only play the game an hour or two and then they write up a review. I mean, let's be honest here. Let's be honest. The hardest review I actually had, speaking of this hive mind, then I'll move on to the next topic. The hardest review I actually ever had was for a game called like Skyrocket or something like that. And the reason why the review was hard is because the game was so bland, I could not think of what to talk about. It took me like a week and a half, and I think the editor got mad at me, to come up with a review for this thing because I could not find anything interesting to say about it. I ended up talking a lot about its development history and stuff because the game itself, there's nothing in it. Wasn't a bad game, but it wasn't a good game. It combined these different elements of like tennis and shmupping and I think like some other gameplay element, but it was neither compelling nor bad. It was just kind of like, it's kind of a unique game. Oh yeah, like a breakout style thing. There just wasn't any meat to this release, and it was a real struggle. Whereas the Psycho ones, at least I had a lot to talk about, right? Even if they were negative reviews. But anyway, so that is the first problem, I think. And this is mostly the thing I run into the most, and most of the reason why I actually unsubscribe from channels. It takes a lot to get me to unsubscribe, actually. I think it does. It generally takes a lot to unsubscribe most viewers. You usually have to just consistently put out enough bad content that they will unsubscribe, or you need to have some kind of meltdown. Either of those will get people to unsubscribe. Sometimes, though, a meltdown, people will tune in more. They're like, oh shit, the guy's losing his mind. I've done that a time or two, I'm not gonna lie, when people are losing it and you're like, okay, I'm kind of excited for the next video, see what they're doing. I actually talked about this a little bit in one of the later videos. Obviously, that's a bad idea in the long run. That's a short-term gain, a long-run disaster. But anyway, the main reason I unsubscribe from channels is they put out so much derivative content that I unsubscribed because I'm like, okay, you're making videos that are so derivative, like Game Explain, right? I was a subscriber to this channel. Good thing I'm not a big YouTuber. I'm going to piss off a lot of YouTube channels in this video. I was a subscriber to Game Explain, and I learned, I just felt like after a while, all of their reviews would always be positive because I felt like they're a little bit in the pocket of Nintendo. I don't know to what degree. I get the deal here. They're going to be like, and these were a few years back. Who knows? They might have changed at this point. This was like 3 or 4 years ago. Basically, every Nintendo game was gold, and they gave them all really good reviews, which, you know what, it is what, I guess you can hear what the fans think, right? Hopefully they don't hear this and get too mad at me. But anyway, maybe they've changed their ways since then, or maybe I'm just an asshole. So let's go on to the second one, which is the loss of connection with the act of gaming itself. This one is big. This one is huge. It's a little bit hard to explain, but basically, these days, a lot of content about gaming content these days has very little to do with gaming itself. Like the actual act of sitting down and playing the game has really fallen off. I think there's a number of reasons for this. One, it is really hard to spin gaming content for a lot of stuff that's coming out now. Because let's be honest, let's be 100% here. Most games that come out these days suck. And they are boring and bland and awful. Most of the stuff that comes out now is not compelling in a gameplay sense, in the very least. So the games themselves are extremely derivative. Sequels that aren't innovations at all, or you know what I mean, or trend following to the point where it's boring. And also the trends themselves today suck. You know, back in the day, everyone used to complain about, oh, Call of Duty's, everything's a Call of Duty clone. Everything's wants to be Call of Duty 4, you know, and that sort of stuff. It's like Modern Warfare. It's like, well, that's because Call of Duty Modern Warfare was actually an awesome game, and people enjoyed playing it, myself included. And so, like, everyone copycatting that, yeah, I mean, it gets boring and annoying, and I'm glad people stop. But at least they were copying something that was interesting and fun. Now everyone's copycatting, you know, stuff like Fortnite, and, you know, before Fortnite, there was PUBG, right? People seem to forget about poor PUBG. But I remember when PUBG was coming out, my friend was really into it, and this was, to me, I hate this style of first-person shooter. I absolutely hate it. For the longest time, like, Counter-Strike, PUBG, Fortnite, team-based first-person shooters, I hate. I've always hated team-based first-person shooters. I think they're incredibly boring. They want you to cooperate with strangers on the internet or get a little crew of friends together. It's like, I've got a life here, and I prefer all-out deathmatch, fast respawns, you know, Unreal Tournament style stuff. Overwatch too. Overwatch, again, basically all the trends in first person shooting, like these lame team shooters. There's no real winner. Everyone's on a team or whatever. I'm pissing off, I'm sure, a lot of people, but I don't like these style first person shooters at all. And I do like FPS, like Halo. I used to go to Halo LAN parties and all that sort of stuff. I love that. But this whole team-based thing to me is really boring. And the idea of Battle Royale is even worse. Like, I'd much prefer team-based deathmatch over Battle Royale. But anyway, so for me, just the trends in gaming themselves are getting boring. And then also, so put it on the, for instance, like popular YouTube creators now and stuff like that, like, they're not really known for their gaming necessarily. They may get their sort of foot in the door, but, and this isn't me being a hater, because I actually have some larger points I want to discuss with this, and I don't want to be just one of these bandwagon haters. But let's say, you know, the bigger gaming people out there, like Ninja, for example. A lot of people, there's like a cottage industry around hating on Ninja, which I think is really lame. If that's how you're going to spend your days, is making content hating on some bland dude, you know, it's like, you know, there's no real reason to hate on this guy, I don't think. But anyway, what I'm getting at though is whenever you hear talking about Ninja or that sort of thing, none of it is gameplay related, basically. Very little that I'm hearing. Like, it's mostly about his personal life or his takes on things, like it's high school, right? We're all going to discuss him around the lunchroom like it's high school. We don't sit and speak. I would respect this sort of content a lot more if they're like, this son of a bitch hasn't won Battle Royale mode in 4 days or whatever, you know, or he's not actually the best player in the world or all that. So I'm like, okay, I think it's still kind of a little bit lame, but at least I can get behind the sentiment, or he cheats, or something gameplay related at the very least. But this whole sort of, hey, let's critique this dude's personality and political views, I know some people are really into that, but to me, I find it incredibly boring and, preachy and stupid. So what I'm getting at is a lot of content you're coming across these days that's popping off, or even that people are pursuing, their connection to gameplay is becoming less and less and less. And of course, maybe I'll talk about why that might be compelling for certain demographics, and I think it is ultimately the direction we will continue to go. But for me, I just can't get into that stuff, right? So that's another huge reason why I don't really connect with many gaming channels out there now, is even stuff that's supposed to be a little bit more hardcore, with like Final Fantasy Remake coming out. I mean, I sat down and listened to dozens of podcasts and videos and all that sort of stuff about that release, because I kind of like to keep an eye on the RPG side of things, because it's just so different from what I do that it's, it's like my break time. It's like, oh, okay, let's listen to people talk about RPGs and stuff, even though I never really play these games. But people were just going off and talking about all these different things about, but very little was connected to the gameplay or the type of thing that I'd be all that interested in, right? It was more like they're getting mad about the socioeconomic themes of the remake and how that changes the underlying meaning of reality and all that sort of stuff. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I know some people are really into this, but just the connection to gameplay isn't there. I think the biggest breath of fresh air, and I think a lot of people who subscribe to my channel will agree, is like the Doom re-releases that came out. I'm not a massive fan of these, but I do think they're good. Like, I haven't played Eternal, but Doom 2016, basically I thought it was like, oh, this is like Doom meets Metroid Prime, basically. I liked it quite a bit. So stuff like that, that trend I do enjoy, but a lot of the other trends and stuff I think are incredibly boring. So I think that's another huge problem with gaming YouTube, that for me as a viewer, is that it's just no connection to gameplay these days. Even in the fighting game, I'll tell you what's going on in fighting games now that makes me want to like puke on the side of the road, pull over my car and throw up, is the other day I was tuning into a bunch of Melee stuff and fighting game stuff. I'm like, yeah, if there's any crowd in YouTubing that's gonna give you some gaming content or some gameplay analysis, and it's still out there, I'm not saying it isn't, I am aware of the channels that provide it, they're all sitting down and playing chess and talking about chess. Fun fact about myself, I played chess in high school. I played not openly because I didn't want to be a nerd, but I did go and hang out with my friends and participated in tournaments in them, and I was actually pretty good at chess for a high schooler. These days in the chess revolution, I probably aren't all that good, but back in the day when no one cared about chess, I basically could beat anyone I meet, anyone in my school, that sort of stuff. So I'm aware of chess and familiar with it, what I'm saying. But, I mean, there's no doubt, I personally find gaming much more interesting than chess, and so this whole chess fad, for me, I'm not into it. And so I was like, really? This is where fighting game has gone? I remember back in the day, we'd all talk about, oh, it's like chess, but it's better because it's real time and it has reactions, and now we're all sitting around actually playing chess. Yeah, that's just the type of stuff that I'm really not all that interested in. And I really think there's a lot of reasons why this is happening. Maybe I'll get into that a little bit further here. That's actually another point later on in the video, but that's an observation I'm coming across that, for me, is just a real drag. It's just the lack of, gameplay focus, right? Like, I'll watch reviews of games that I'm interested in, like the few that come out. They'll never mention gameplay, or they won't really dig into it. Of course, I don't expect everyone to dig into it to the degree that I do. I mean, that's something I'm personally very passionate about, right? Like, if I'm gonna review something, even if it's not a shmup, I'm gonna really bite into the gameplay mechanics and talk about if they're stupid or not. But yeah, that loss is a big deal, and that wasn't the case. A few years back, I think the holy grail of this is Matthew Matosis's channel. I mean, he's really talented at this. I really love his videos, and he continues to make great videos. He just has really slowed down production these days. But yeah, I think he was sort of the king of this back in the day. His breakdowns of Mario and Zelda, which don't necessarily have that interesting gameplay to begin with, and he really got in there. So if you want to hear an example, I think it's very quality, his stuff back in the day. He was the very first person I was ever a patron of, actually. I made a patron account for his channel, and then he immediately stopped uploading after it became a Patreon, so I was like, okay, I guess I'll stop supporting him at some point. Anyway, so the third thing that I want to talk about is the lack of identity in channels now and the chasing of the algorithm. This kind of ties back into the Hivemind. These sort of overlap a little bit, but there's a little bit more here that I want to dig into. So basically, a lot of channels now I feel like lack identity. My channel, I think, has a lot of identity because my personality is just overwhelming to the point where even I can't contain it in my content. For example, I'm on a hot streak and here I am complaining about YouTube videos. But I think a lot of channels out there really lack a sense of identity, especially smaller ones, where you can't quite sink your teeth into them. And I think there's a lot of reasons for this. In the past, this wasn't as much the case. For again, Some Call Me Johnny, for example. The dude doesn't appear to have a really strong personality or anything like that, but he still had a certain identity to his channel, a certain vibe, a feel, which is kind of like, the reason why I really connected with his channel back in the day, your best friend that you used to go over and talk about games with after school, like that sort of thing, where he wasn't really digging into things necessarily all that deeply, but he had like this fun sense of humor, and he seemed to value the same types of things that your friends in high school did, type of thing. I really liked it back in the day. So that type of stuff, a lot of channels now, because I think what it is you're trying to sort of fit what's going on with the algorithms and with sort of the hive mind is people are really looking for a lot of specific things. And so to even get your channel off the ground, you have to sort of check these boxes. And it really makes people really uniform. And it makes people really hard to kind of connect with because they're all covering the same talking points. They're all sort of these pleasant personalities, which, works really well. They're not saying anything too wild or too spicy or, too off the cuff or that sort of thing, which I can all respect. But for me, it just makes it really hard to connect with these channels. And I think as a creator too, I think it puts them in a little bit of an issue where I've noticed this with some other channel. I had an interview with Resonant Arc, which was a channel I definitely look up to. It's still around. They've just been so inactive. I sometimes wonder if they've low-key retired or something. But Resonant Arc, formerly Dark Pixel Gaming, was a channel it was one of my top channels that I really liked to watch back in the day and stuff. And I think it was kind of cool. They were in Utah. They weren't that far away from me. But anyway, I had a conversation with a Mike from that channel, and we talked about this sort of thing where there was a period there. I don't know if he's sort of I think he's backed up off the idea, but there was a period there where he's known for Final Fantasy analysis videos. Like that's the hotness. That's his bread and butter. That's his summoning salt world record progression. Like that's what everyone tuned into his channel for. And then he made some videos that I think were actually really good, where he did other things. Like he talked about his love of music and video games and did some somewhat related content, but it wasn't the bread and butter main series. And he was really discouraged. 1/80th or whatever of his regular viewership tuned in for those. And we talked about this in the interview, and he was saying basically that he needed to learn to accept that his channel and basically all YouTube channels are fast food restaurants, to where if you go to Taco Bell, you're gonna get, certain type of Mexican food. If you go to McDonald's, you're gonna get Whoppers and that sort of stuff. And he's saying you can't go to McDonald's and get a chalupa. You can't go to Taco Bell and get a Whopper or get like Thai food and that sort of thing. Like, and that's basically what he was saying is what I'm doing right now, where, this channel is mostly about arcade and shmup content. And here I am yammering on about the death of quality of YouTube videos. I push back on that, and I still don't quite agree to some degree. And hopefully I can improve this on my channel. It's yet to be proven. But I'm hoping that basically what you can court multiple audiences, but you need to have a strong vibe through your videos, and you need to create a sort of narrative throughout your videos that people will tune in for. So even though this video isn't necessarily on the topic of Raiden Fighters Aces or something, there's still a through line between the videos that connects them, an aesthetic, an idea, even like a little bit of a narrative where, for instance, I'm talking about my time at Nintendo Life, right? And how that connects to the world of shmups and my reviewing for shmups. You need to sort of unwrap the videos within each other in some sort of way, which I think you can't do right away. Like the first ones, I've done this for a while now. Like I've done YouTube, talking about YouTube videos and stuff on this channel already, or like anime reviews, like offshoot content. you basically, what you have to do is you have to re-earn your audience to watch your offshoot content. I think over time it might be possible to bring it more in line with your regular viewership. I think the YouTuber that I think has done this the best is Maximilian Dude. He's done it in such a subtle and cunning way that you forget. For example, Maximilian Dude is known for, of course, fighting games, right? He's the fighting game YouTubing god. Like his numbers compared to everyone else in the FGC is absurd. He's much bigger than everyone else. But his brand also has other associations that it honestly shouldn't, but it does. For instance, he was one of the main Final Fantasy VII YouTubers. Like, he was connected a lot to the actual team. He met them. A lot of people tuned into his channel specifically for Final Fantasy VII. On the face of that, that makes no damn sense. What is Maximilian Dude doing being one of the premier Final Fantasy VII reviewers when he's a fighting game guy? But the way he did it, the way he implemented that, genius. The way he worked it into his content. The guy, I think he's one of the best YouTubers out there. As far as gaming YouTubers, I always think Maximilian Dude is top tier. And I often look to his channel for inspiration because he pulls this shit off in subtle and amazing ways to where even I had to check, like, double take, like, wait a minute. I'm coming to his channel for Final Fantasy VII content for some reason. Why is this happening? I am actually not entirely sure how he pulls it off, but he's one of the best at it. Like, he's able to get his mainline content and his side content really aligned to where a lot of his viewers will go through it. Because he has such a strong, I think, vibe and aesthetic to his channel. He's like your homie surfer friend who's also a little bit of a nerd type thing. It's hard to really pin down his vibe. He definitely has a distinctive one. So I think that's a huge issue with channels these days, and why a lot of channels I think have faded away over time. Channels I tuned into is they just didn't have that oomph to stay around, right? That distinction to where, you know, they blended in. Like, there was this one guy who did these sort of RPG reviews. This is a small YouTuber, like a small dude. It took me like a year to realize he was gone. I was like, oh crap, this guy, he was a smaller channel. It took me like a year to realize, oh, his channel is just gone. Like, he stopped uploading. But it took like a year for me to notice because his videos would just blend in with everything else so well that I forgot, you know, he was a different person from other people. That type of thing I think happens to channels a lot. And that's kind of what happens to a lot of channels I've watched, where you just see their numbers slowly decline. It's not like a massive drop off. They weren't canceled or anything, but they just slowly taper off. And then they get to that bottom level and then they leave quietly in the night. That's what happens to most channels, I think. I think it's a rare case that a lot of channels go out in a blaze of glory. Some of them do, but I think that's less of a case. And chasing the algorithm, I'll move on to the next topic here shortly, but I think chasing the algorithm is basically, your channel can't really develop a sense of identity if you're constantly chasing after the algorithm, because you'll just always hive mind into everyone else. This happened to me recently where I have to like avoid this intentionally sometimes I'm coming at it from a place of genuine interest, but everyone else is coming into it from a place of, hey, let's chase the algorithm, to where I get lost in the mix. So I sometimes put videos on delay strictly because of this. For example, the GoldenEye remake or whatever, the Xbox 360 version of GoldenEye, the remaster. I knew about this thing for years. I'm a huge GoldenEye fan. For people, you know, my regular viewers probably know this, but newer viewers, yeah, I'm a huge GoldenEye fan. One of my favorite games of all time. Definitely up there with Star Fox 64 on the N64 is among my favorite N64 games. I've probably played it more than Star Fox 64, to be honest, total game time. So in that metric, it is my favorite N64 game. And I've been looking forward to this leak for years because I knew it existed. And I was just like, okay, someday someone's going to drop this. And they finally dropped it. And I was going to cover it on my channel and talk about it and do a review of it, all that good stuff, because I'm such a huge fan of it. Everyone else and their dog made GoldenEye 007 remaster videos. Even people in the past who I know don't like GoldenEye. They've made videos and they've said, I'm not a fan of GoldenEye. I think the controls are stupid. I think this and that. I don't like the game. I think it's overrated. And they still make a video about it. It's like, okay, everyone and their dog made videos about GoldenEye Remaster. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to, trying to run out of a room or trying to leave a movie theater while everyone else is leaving. I'm the dude who always sits in the credits, not because I want to see the post-credit scene, which is like a new phenomenon. The analogy I'm getting at, though, is I also hate trying to get out of the theater while everyone else is shoving and trying to get out of the way. So I'd always sit, wait for everyone to leave, then I'd get up. And I kind of do that with videos unless it's something I'm real excited about, like an M2 release or something like that. But with that, for instance, I will make that GoldenEye remaster video at some point, but it's going to be months later when no one gives a crap. But at the same time, I can at least come at it from a fresh perspective. I'm not in that jumble where I start blabbing what everyone else is saying, or what I'm saying is blending in, or I also could have a little bit of time to reflect on what was said and what wasn't said. That is a little bit of an advantage from a creative standpoint. Not that that really matters in the YouTubing algorithm, but at least quality-wise, you can say, well, my video stands out from the rest. I know this because I've seen all the rest of the videos and they didn't address these points. So that's another huge problem with the algorithm. This is something I struggle with myself because as a YouTuber, I'll tell you, you get much more views and much more exposure doing this than you do creating this internal narrative of content, right? Like reviews of games that are old or esoteric topics or, all that sort of stuff. But that's what makes your channel original, is that sort of content. So I think my approach is now what I've decided to do is if I am genuinely really excited for the release, which is kind of rare, so this is a little bit punishing of a rule that I'm doing on myself, but if I'm genuinely interested in the release, I will do it. But if I'm not, for instance, the Capcom Arcade Stadium that came out, I want to say I'd be interested in that, but I'm just not, because I just know what it's going to be. And I know it's going to be like an improvement probably over what we've gotten in the past, but it's not something that, these are games that have already been released. I've already played them through unofficial emulation. I know some people are going to be excited about it, but I'm not personally all that interested in it. I don't think I'll be covering it on my channel by any means. Maybe, but probably not. But there's that impulse when you see it come out and you can feel the heat coming off the screen, like, oh, this is a hot topic. People are going to tune in. People are going to want to hear what I have to say. But if what I have to say is just kind of boring, is it worth it? I don't know. So that's something and also like every video you do kills some other video. This is like, time is not unlimited, right? Every video you make kills its unborn brethren. So I'm going to be finally finishing my Fight and Rage review. So if I was spending all week working on that Capcom review, the Fight and Rage review wouldn't happen. So everything has a price and you have to kind of weigh the pros and cons there. I will do it for every single M2 Shot Triggers release though. I don't care because I'm always going to cover those games. But you know what I mean? You got to pick your battles. This is the one I've spent days thinking about the most as far as how the hell do I talk about this without murdering my own channel, is politics and preachiness. Dun, dun, dun. So, politics. Enough said. No, I'm just kidding. I've really tried my best to think of a way to put this because in my Discord, you all notice it for the people in the Discord, I've said like strictly no politics, and I'm very firm about that. I used to not be, honestly. Last year and the year before that, I wasn't all into politics. I definitely wasn't encouraging people to talk about it, but I was like, I don't see a real need to be too uptight about it. And this is when I had a tiny server of like 40, 50 people, that got along and all that sort of thing. As things grow and as times become much more turbulent, I had to sort of be much more firm with that because the problem I've been running into, and why I want to bring this up here, I mean, there's no denying this is an issue, is that it's infecting everything. Like everything is becoming political, everything. I actually had conversations in the past on Discord, people yelling at me and arguing with me about things, where I used to be much more active on my Discord, actually just talking about random subjects, sort of just like, talking about the new Ghost in the Shell movie, or talking about like different movies, different books, those types of things. I've kind of held off on that right now because, and this is the reason why, everything you talk about becomes political. Every single thing. So every time you make some kind of comment about anything in life or anything in art, you have to prepare yourself. Okay, this is going to devolve into some kind of political battle between people. And what's really great about politics right now, what I actually really appreciate about politics right now, is that you actually don't need to have a political opinion. You will be assigned one. So you don't actually have to have any sort of firm political beliefs or even want to discuss it. That's not a problem anymore. People will just give you your political opinion for you, as I found out. Where I think it was the Ghost... Okay, this will be an example. Hopefully this example doesn't spiral off into a political battle in the comment section or in my Discord, but basically, a few years ago, I can't remember how long ago it was. Remember when Scarlett Johansson was cast as the Major in Ghost in the Shell, right? And there's that big controversy about it. Okay, so I actually went and saw the movie, controversies be damned, because, you know, I'm a huge Ghost in the Shell fan, of course, and if it's a raging fire, I'm going to go see it. Sometimes, if I'm a fan of something, I will go see it even if it's a raging fire, like the Star Wars movies. I'm not going to continue going to see Star Wars, but those three, I was going to stick through them, whatever the hell happened, because watch the house burn down, that type of thing. But anyway, so I went and saw this Ghost in the Shell movie, and I walked out of it not disappointed, because I didn't think it'd be that great. It was, you know, I don't know. It wasn't that great, to be honest. It wasn't horrible. I wasn't like, you've killed my childhood, you know, all those types of things. It was actually better than the Star Wars remakes, I'll tell you that, or the Star Wars sequels, I'll tell you that. But it wasn't that good, you know what I mean? If you're a Ghost in the Shell fan, it didn't have that spice, that magic. And then, of course, I'm such a nerd that I'm always pointing out like small inconsistencies, like, oh, the Major in her creation sequence, it shouldn't look like this, it should look like that. Or, oh, the Major, the way she's standing, she's moving too much when she stands. She needs to stand more still because she's a machine. You know, I'm like one of those people. And so, but yeah, I actually came out of that, and I was talking about all these different issues in the Discord, like, oh, you know, what Scarlett Johansson said this line, she had too much emotion. She was too emotional in the film. She should have been more stoic. The Major was stoic and philosophical, you know, whatever it was, you know what I mean? It just kind of blowing off steam and talking shit. We live in the age, and this was before 2020, so this was before even things got real political. But I was fortunate enough to sit down and get schooled about the real issue of the film, which was the fact that Scarlett Johansson was cast and not an Asian lady. And I was like, yeah, I could see that, but I just was like, well, you know, the Major is a robot, right? So robots don't have an ethnicity necessarily, and you know what I mean? But it's like, you know what you're getting into there. I was saying, like, okay, it probably wasn't the best choice, but is it that big of a deal? Because the Major is a robot. She's not actually an Asian woman. And I think they had, in the film, people didn't mention this, her mom or whatever was an Asian lady. So the theming, it kind of fit with the theming of the movie, actually, where they took this Asian woman, the original Major, I can't remember her Japanese name, and then they made her this cybernetic body that was like a different race or whatever. They didn't really play on the race thing, but I'm saying it could be explained. But of course, you know, that turned into this huge political battle in the comments or in the Discord, and I was like, okay, I regret bringing this movie up in the first place, because I didn't really want to get into that, and I didn't really care all that much. But the point of this is that there came a point in the conversation where one of the guys in there was saying, the fact that you don't have a political opinion on this is irrelevant because everything is political. And I was like, everything? He's like, yes. Literally everything is political. And I was trying to convey the point to him that everything can be political if you make it that way. If you live in that brain space where literally everything is political, then yes, everything is political. You could say that about any obsession and any sort of brainwashing, maybe. This is something that is really, really hard for me these days. This is my biggest issue that I run into now as a creator, is how do I create content that has any sort of opinion that doesn't devolve into political battles in the comment section or in the Discord? Because I personally I'm completely disinterested in politics. Completely disinterested. And people don't believe you when you say that. They're like, no, you have some secret political agenda you're trying to hijack into your content and into your analysis and indoctrinate us in. It's in there somewhere, or it's unconscious. You're unconsciously doing it. Okay, do we have to have the unconscious discussion there? Like, do we have to get, Freudian here? But anyway, this is something that I think has really, really damaged gaming YouTube a lot. And this is something that, besides just making lackluster content, this is a number one reason I will unsubscribe from someone. It's sort of taken over their content. There's a lot of channels actually like this, that this has happened, to where I don't really care what people's political opinions are. I really don't care. But I'm not tuning in to get preached at. And I also think it's kind of a shallow way to go as a content creator, as an artist. I've argued with people a lot too. And might just be my personal taste here, but I don't personally like political art all that much. If it's really good, if it's really got something to say, like 1984, I'll allow it. The thing about 1984 that I appreciate isn't necessarily the politics of it, but the way it conveys how you can brainwash people, how you can program people. That stuff I think is very potent, and why I think so many people constantly refer to that book, because it's like a little manual on how to brainwash people. And I think we run into that a lot now, but you can't. It's a lose-lose situation for me. You know, I'm not here to battle with people about politics, but people really insist on it, and so it's killed a ton of my videos, a ton of like videos that have been unborn children, because I went to go make them and I was like, this could get political. Like, some of them were funny too. Like, I wanted to do this one video where it was a Sim City review, but I would be doing a bunch of like wild shit as the mayor. Like, I would be raising the tax rates super high, and I'd have no police departments and no fire departments, and like sticking factories in the middle of the town. Basically, like, how do we piss off the city so much that people riot? That was kind of I thought it'd be kind of a fun video to do, but I was like, riots, police force, fire departments, pollution, taxes. This isn't gonna go well, you know, even if it's just for a fun little video. So I killed the video. Another one that I was gonna do that I think was much more important, but I ended up killing it, was I was going to do a little video on Apollo Legend, who committed suicide just earlier this year. And I really wanted to do this video because I'll see how I can slide in and out of this topic without getting too heavy here, but Idaho has incredibly high suicide rates. Basically, every single year, a kid in my class committed suicide. Like, you know, different kids, obviously, but friends of mine, people I knew. I mean, it's something that's been part of my life in a lot of ways. Like, you know, I've just seen it a lot, and I've seen the progress. I've seen someone go from being relatively normal to being suicidal and finishing their suicide. I've seen it, you know, up close and personal. And I wanted to make this video because this happens in gaming a lot of gamers per capita. But I mean, it's something that affects the gamer population because there's a lot of comorbidity, a lot of overlapping factors, you know, and I think people who are sort of on that path, you know, gaming can be sort of a haven for them at times. And so I really wanted to make this video, though, because the idea was to sort of honor his life a little bit, but then also to be a little bit of a PSA on, like, okay, these are signs you need to watch for. And actually, and I'd kind of like retrace back, like, okay, this behavior here is like a total red flag. This behavior here is a total red flag of Apollo's channel. I was debating whether I wanted to do it because it was going to be a very heavy, strong departure from the regular video content. But I wanted to sort of frame it as a PSA, like, because this is something that could genuinely help my viewers. That's why I was like, I probably have viewers who are suicidal. I mean, let's be honest. Find help, right? Because I'm not going to be able to help you directly. The idea was just to create a sort of PSA for people to better understand what people go through and the process and how people can actually get help and what that looks like, right? Like what that actually looks like. Because it's not just, you know, go see a doctor, get a prescription, and you're out skipping and holding hands, right? Like there's a life. Like it can be a year, a very long process, and a lot of different things need to be addressed usually. But anyway, I was going to make this video. I'm rambling here. I was going to make this video, and I was testing the waters in my Discord channel a little bit by sort of talking a little bit about it in the Discord. The Discord exploded into a political argument that lasted weeks. The fact that, because it's basically like one person chimed in and said, yeah, he's dead, but dude had some suspicious white supremacist sort of leanings. And it's like, well, you know, he's a dead man. Do we need to go there? And you know what I mean? And it exploded. The freaking Discord exploded, and it lasted for like weeks because I was like, okay, if I can't talk about this dude in my Discord, imagine the freaking video. Imagine what would happen on that video. So I killed the video. But just stuff like that. I mean, you can't really politics really boxes you in these days. And this is, I think, a newer phenomenon. Because I remember back in the past, like watching YouTube videos and stuff, and you might get some tangential political opinions here and there. Fine, whatever, who cares? But not the same level of intensity and preachiness. And I want to say it's not because I'm offended by any of this. I've seen every political opinion under the sun. I've never really been all that interested in it. I've had a much more intensive background growing up with like religious fundamentalism and stuff like that, where, you know, politics seems pretty watered down in comparison, you know, to life or death sort of religious fundamentalism and how intense that gets. And the last thing I want to say about politics, liken it to something like heroin, where you make a little political video here and there on your YouTube channel, you know, gaming YouTube channel, and it's like that little hit. You get a little extra oomph in that video where people are like, yeah. And there's like that little oomph you add in there. But, you know, it's like shooting up. You shoot up once, you might have a good time the first time, but then it starts to really get in there. And before you know it, you're telling people to go out and vote and who to vote for and, you know, where to register. And, oh yeah, something about a game somewhere in there. I can't remember. Using games as a basis for your political opinions, you know, and I guess it is what it is. And maybe that's just a new industry, because I think this is something people are picking up on. It's like, oh, I don't really need to play games or talk about games all that much. I can just kind of use them as a social basis for expressing my political directives and that sort of stuff. I guess it is what it is. But I think this is, hopefully I've articulated this without igniting a war. And I kind of personally do like the idea of creating a fan base that has multiple perspectives, where people probably wouldn't get along with each other normally, but the love of shmups and the love of arcade games holds them at bay, you know, makes them find a little piece of common ground, maybe just a little. I think that's enough said on politics for sure. Number 4, toxic drama. So I want to preface this a little bit here. So this video is going long. Toxic drama, there's a specific brand of drama I'm actually talking about here, because I'm not 100% opposed to drama content. I think most gaming YouTubers, you know, tend to say, oh, drama content, I don't like that. That's bad. I don't like drama content. And yet you tune in for drama content like everyone else. Don't deny it. You do. Drama content, again, it's kind of like a political content where it's like a needle in the arm. Every now and then, a little hit of drama. And I actually prefer drama over politics. Like, I'd prefer to watch someone blast other YouTubers or that sort of thing than go on about their political opinions, to be honest. But I'd actually much prefer drama over that. But the problem with drama content, of course, is that it's empty calories, just like the morphine rat analogy. And to the point where you're basically turning yourself into the content, which is an interesting play. So my rule on drama content is, if you can keep it interesting, if you can keep it crazy enough to where I'll tune in and it's connecting with me in some way, I'll tolerate it. But it's got to be interesting. It's got to be good. And most drama content, and there's a type of drama content that I like, where, for instance, I'm not gonna lie, cheating drama gets me. I've made my own sort of cheating drama videos in the past. I'm not gonna really make any more unless something crazy comes up. But cheating gets me because I hate cheating, and I don't mind seeing cheaters called out and have to explain themselves. I think in some degree that's healthy, depending. Like, I think some people go overboard. But the big thing about drama content that I really am getting sick of, and this is actually, I think, some of the worst gaming content there is these downfall takedown videos. I think this stuff is actually sociopathic in many ways and sick. Like, I think that this one guy did this whole one on Boogie. I don't know who the hell Boogie is, to be honest. I heard him interviewed on a few like podcasts back in the day, but he's basically like this redneck streamer, right? And I watched this video a while back now where it basically went into his personal life to an extreme degree, and it wasn't like a documentary. It was like a takedown video. It was like, this is why this guy's a piece of shit. This is why this guy deserves to suffer. This is why this guy deserves to lose subs. And the guy making the video was so judgmental and also so self-righteous. I'm like sitting there like, wait a minute, dude. You're basically going through and judging this guy and blasting him publicly, almost doxing him publicly for your own enjoyment and your own profit. And you also get off on sort of judging him and saying this. And the really uncomfortable part of the video that I thought was the real no-no for me was that Boogie apparently had it sounds like a horrific abusive history. Like sounds like, from what I was gathering, was abused horrifically to like clinically, right? Like these types of people would need clinical intervention, like systematically abused by his mother, and then also expresses all these suicidal ideation throughout the entire video, talking about how he wants to kill himself, how he wants to die. And the whole time the guy making this drama takedown video is like, oh, Boogie, he's just doing that to gain sympathy. He's just doing that to get people's attention. He's just doing that to excuse himself. It's like, homie, that's very unlikely the case. That is very unlikely the case. If you look at his, I mean, this is armchair psychology, but I wouldn't want this on my conscience. The dude has this horrific abuse history, and then you're publicly blasting him, and he's talking about, before this takedown video was made too, he's talking about killing himself on a regular basis. These are all huge warning signs. And so, like, imagine Apollo Legend, right? Imagine you make this video on Apollo Legend about what a piece of shit he is and all that sort of stuff. Then the dude offs himself. On some level, you're like, damn, maybe I regret making that video. Even if it's not necessarily the case they kill themselves, it's just, you know, that weighs on you. That weighs on you. That's why I'm not a fan of these takedown videos. I think they are always coming from people who, I think it's just like they want to get angry, they want to get even. I think it's just a glorified version of doxing people, to be honest. So these are by far my least favorite bit of content, and I'm not a judgmental person, but this is something I do tend to judge. Like, oh, you're making these takedown videos. I would never associate with someone who does that, because it's a big. It's one thing to call out cheating, right? But what I'm talking about, like, you're talking about their personal life. You're talking about who they are as a person, not, oh, they cheated, you know? Like I said, cheating call-out videos is one thing, but like talking about who they are, what a piece of shit they are, how they, you know, deserve to lose their viewership, how they shouldn't have, you know, a career, all that stuff, I think that's pretty ugly. I wanted to talk about that a bit. I think toxic drama is a real big thing, and it's getting bigger. And a lot of the channels that I used to watch, you know, they've either become bland or they've become like the CU podcast, for example. I followed them for years, but I quit listening to them about a year ago because I felt like this is just a drama channel now. Like, this is pretty much just a drama channel, and it wasn't as spicy enough to keep it coming, right? It got a little bit preachy and boring, and that was okay. I'm gonna move on for that. So toxic drama, and then the fifth reason or sixth reason, I guess, that I'm gonna finish off with here: lack of meaning and longevity, or lack of future directions. I think this is something that is definitely much more common, of course, among the older channels, but something that I think a lot of channels struggle with, and something I'm trying my best to plan against either way. So lack of meaning, this is something that I'm picking up on a lot as of late and thinking about a lot, and it's really informing the content that I make these days, much more than it used to, where every video I make now, I sit down and say, 5 years from now, would someone get anything out of this video? 5 years from now, would this video have any meaning? 5 years from now, can I look back on this video and say, yeah, that was cool? And the thing is, I do have content like this, not 5 years old, but my original podcast episodes, right? Season 1 of the podcast that I released. I sat down, re-listened to all that stuff. I was like, this all holds up. Like, this has meaning. And a lot of my favorite content in gaming, I go back to. I will like literally go back and watch it, go back and listen to it, especially podcasts, really good podcasts. I'll go back and listen to those. I'll go back and watch Matthew Matosis videos. Like, that kind of stuff holds up over time. Like old Avoiding the Puddle podcasts. Eris had a podcast once upon a time. It was actually really good. I think probably one of the best FGC podcasts there was. Still go back and listen to old ATP episodes, because Eris was so charismatic on the mic. And personally, I think he's a much more interesting podcaster than YouTuber or streamer, unfortunately. So I miss when he used to do podcasts and stuff. But yeah, that stuff I think still holds up over time. And I actually was very influential on the Electric Underground initially. Like a lot of my early episodes, I would listen to ATP for inspiration on but translate them into a shmupping. That's kind of gone away over the years, but at the beginning, huge influence of mine. So stuff like that really holds up over time. Whereas again, like streaming, right? Am I going to watch a month-old stream? Maybe if it's real good, but most likely not, right? Same thing with the stuff that Dreamcast guy does. He's kind of my go-to news type guy, like what's trending, Hivemind type content. You gotta have one of them, right? And for me, I'm Dreamcast guy the best for that stuff. So those are the things that I wanted to talk about, sort of get off my chest. This is more of like a podcasting, just let it all hang out type of video. Nothing too serious, nothing too direct or anything like that. I hope you all enjoy it. I don't think there's necessarily anything to be done about it. I think we're just in a new era. Things are changing. Things are moving forward. And the best thing to do is just try and keep on the straight and narrow, keep delivering the goods. That's my good game plan, is just keep bringing the heat, keep it original, keep it interesting, keep it, not too preachy or not too annoying. And I think you'll be fine in the long run. Also have like respectable goals, of course. I'm not expecting... This is one last point. Some people talked about in my previous videos, like, hey, I appreciate your videos, Mark, but I don't think they'll ever hit that mainstream level. And to that I say, yeah, I agree. But that's not the goal of the channel. Now, I don't want to wallow in obscurity. Let's not get that twisted. I do want viewers. But there's just certain thresholds that you have to accept for certain types of content, right? The type of content I make will not be broadly mainstream because it cannot cater to that audience by its nature. But I do think there's a real healthy potential audience out there that I could capture, and I'd be happy with that. Right now, I'm still in that poverty tier of YouTuber, but I think there is a larger audience that could be captured and brought in. It's just a matter of delivering good content, keeping up the marketing, keeping up all that stuff. I mean, it's not easy, but it's also not death by design, right? It's not hopeless either if you have a realistic expectation. Somewhere along the lines of, 10K subs, 20K subs if I'm real good, real lucky, somewhere in there. I think I'd be perfectly happy with that in that area. And I think that's definitely realistic and possible. And I'm kind of reflectively looking back, even though it's been a long grind, I do kind of, I guess, appreciate now in some degree that my rise in popularity has been turtle slow, has been the pace of a snail, because I think it's taught me a lot of lessons while I was still obscure. And I think had I gotten popular too quickly, I would have fallen into a lot of these pitfalls that I talked about. I'm sure that I would have. I think it would have been too overwhelming. I remember at one point I had 100 listeners and I was like, can't do this anymore. It's getting too real, when I had 100 listeners. So I think for me, just with my temperament, and it's also pushed me to increase the quality of my videos and stuff, I think a slow, steady grind upward is probably the healthiest. Hopefully it continues. And my backup plan, speaking of longevity, my backup plan is if the channel just doesn't pan out, people stop, people lose interest in it, they think it's stupid or whatever, or I don't know what, I just crash and burn out my channel in some crazy way. The backup plan is to go into shmup development and just start creating indie shmups, get more involved in that side of things. So that's my backup plan. And my success plan is if I'm able to get into that 20K range, I have a lot of plans in mind that I think would be healthy rather than just me chasing algorithms and the kind of low-key ideas to just kind of compete with Nintendo Life, but Electric Underground style, right? Be more of a publication, rather than just a YouTube channel. Be more of like a publication like Nintendo Life, but compete with them a little bit. That would be my goal if the channel was able to grow more. Obviously show a very different outlook on gaming, journalism, and game reviews. But anyway, yeah, thanks so much for tuning in. I'm always divided on whether or not to thank my patrons in these videos, because these uncut videos, it's like maybe some of my patrons are like, what the hell are you doing? Yeah, I don't agree with any of this shit you're saying, but I'll thank them anyway, just in case. So thank you to 72PCT Water, Adam Pearson, Adrian Reyes, Ukshay Wadkar, Dingo, Handicapped, Anthony A., Ben Wynn, Borgie22, Brian Shiver, Corio, Danielle Savage, Delta Tango 6, Disco Stas Leia, Dominic NG, Eric H, Full Set, Retro Schmupper, Geriatric, Donmaku, Hausu, Ilya, Kiwi, JLab, JBRPG, Joe Angelo, Gameboy Guru, K, Malays, Mark Toms, Maz, Meher Calendrian, Minong, Queen Charlene, Nathaniel Davis, N Electron, 9, Ogla Kugels, Philip Mason, Portal 63, Ram Q, Raul, Real Skeen, Sketchy Raccoon, The Boot Rex, TRM, Sugumo, Plasmo, Yishi, and Utakaya. Thanks for watching.